Rise and shine, my sinners. When Father Evil starts his day, he gets a little deadly. Deadly Grounds coffee has the richest, smoothest flavor you'll find anywhere. It's sinfully delicious. Once you go deadly, you never go back. Order yours at getdeadly.com. Coffee's so good, it's scary.
Week after week, the Cape Crusader copes with the tricky traps of vicious villains. Will the time arrive when the Cape crime fighters come too close to the jaws of death?
Holy metronome, what a fate! Punched in the player piano rolls.
Watch Batman in color on ABC.
What kind of a sick school is this?
Uh-oh, Dongo!
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
You got spunk. I hate spunk.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger.
Oh, righty.
How you doing? Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Say hello to my little friend!
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
What are you people? On dope?
Stop whining.
I got a crap on deck that can choke a donkey.
Who is your daddy?
I'm sorry, but all questions must be submitted in writing.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Can I do that?
I'll be back.
A dynamite! Show me the money! Don't! Up your nose with your rubber hose.
A what?
I'm sailing! I'm sailing!
You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Love means never having to say you're sorry.
Here's looking at you, kid.
We got no food. We got no jobs. Our pets' heads are falling off.
Come to the coast. We get together, have a few laughs.
Hear that, Elizabeth? I'm coming to join you, honey.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV.
I love it when a plan comes together.
What we do is if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to
11, exactly. One louder.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
We're on a mission from God.
Hello and welcome to another amazing episode of Then Is Now podcast. I am your host, Re-Gor. As we've discussed on the show in the past, comic books and superheroes are a part of our pop culture that have never disappeared from our collective zeitgeist. Batman first appeared in 1939 in Detective Comics and continues to be hugely popular 81 years later. On January 12, 1966, the ABC network premiered a TV series that would not only catapult the character of Batman into the mainstream pop culture, but also create living legends out of its two stars, Adam West and Burt Ward. Today, we've got a special guest on our show that is one of those living legends. He's not going to just discuss the Batman TV series, but also his amazing career and causes that he works for. If you've never seen the Batman show, I highly recommend that you do immediately. I just found, as of this recording, that it's on the Roku channel, but you have to search for it. And please, share this show with younger people, especially kids, who will thoroughly enjoy it, as will you. So sit back and prepare to enjoy an interview with a living legend of our pop culture. Class is in session.
I have a bad feeling about this.
How could I possibly be expected to handle school on a day like this?
Food fight!
Hey, you in my class? I am today.
I think you should consider transferring to shop class. Now, very few students are severely injured in shop class.
Bueller.
When you were in school,
Bueller.
did you ever cut class?
Bueller.
Yeah, I guess I did. Sure, most kids cut classes.
Good, sign this. He's sick.
I get so lonely when I hear that third attendance bell ring and all my kids are not here.
7 years of college down the drain.
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
You lack discipline.
As long as I'm here, there will be no grades or gold stars or demerits. We're gonna have recess all the time.
Woo! Go, play, and have fun now!
Okay, folks, today I am once again joined by podcaster Justin Cooper. Welcome back, Justin.
Thanks for having me, Raj.
Awesome. Are you excited as I am about today's guest?
You know I am. Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. So let's get right to it. He's a karate expert, and at age 13, he pitched 4 no-hit, no-run games in the Los Angeles Municipal Baseball League. The same year, he won first place in his high school decathlon. He was in Ripley's Believe It or Not as the world's youngest professional ice skater at the age of 2. Not only is he a black belt in karate, an all-around athlete, proficient in wrestling, track, tennis, golf, and an expert in skin diving, he also has a sharp intellect, playing first board in chess for Beverly Hills High School, achieving the top 3% in the U.S. in math and science tests at UCLA, and is the world's fastest reader, clocking in at 30,000 words per minute with 90% comprehension, as well as being a proficient pianist. At age 19, he obtained a license to sell real estate in California, but it was his role as Robin the Boy Wonder, sidekick to master crime fighter Batman in the 1966 TV series of the same name, that really propelled him into the stratosphere as a teen idol. From there, he's created several companies, including Entertainment Management Corp., in which he managed such talent as Henry Winkler, Paul Michael Glaser, and Mark Hamill, as well as bands like The Silvers and REO Speedwagon. Not only has he played a hero on screen, but he's also a hero in real life, who has rescued countless dogs with his company Gentle Giants Rescue and Adoptions, a non-profit charity created by him and his wife Tracy. Gentle Giants has rescued and adopted more than 15,500 giant breed and small breed dogs during their 22 years of operation. It is the world's largest big dog rescue. On top of that, he's created Gentle Giants dog food, which has been proven to double the life of a large dog, and he's just created Gentle Giants cat food, both of which are available in over 1,800 Walmart stores nationwide, 250 stores in Canada, as well as 1,100 Target stores in the U.S. He's recently guest starred on the CW Network's crossover episode with The Arrow, The Flash, Batwoman, Black Lightning, and Supergirl to help solve the crisis on Infinite Earths. He was given the Icon Award on Oscar Night 2018 from the Roger Neal Style Hollywood Oscar Viewing Dinner and received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on January 9th, 2020. His autobiography, titled Boy Wonder, My Life in Tights, documents all the dirty laundry and secret behind-the-scenes trysts in Wayne Manor and the Batcave. He can still be seen on television on Batman, which is on MeTV and other channels, and is still broadcast worldwide to this day. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man who has gone from Caped Crusader to Canine Crusader, the legendary and iconic Mr. Burt Ward.
Hello, citizens!
Oh, man, it's so awesome to have you here. Thank you for coming on the show.
It's great.
You know, I got to say that I imagine that there's just tons and tons of people that have fond memories of watching you on TV as I did. So let's start from the beginning. What prompted you to get into acting? You were in summer stock 3 years before Batman, right?
Right. Well, I tell you what's interesting. It's a kind of a combination of things. As a kid growing up, I was at 3 years of age, I wanted to be Superboy. Now, where I lived, they didn't have Batman comic books. So what they had was Superman comic books and Superboy. So as a 3-year-old, I wanted to be like Superboy. And believe it or not, as I was growing up, you know, I thought about all of this and the tremendous daring do's and fantastic things that crime fighters could do. So on one hand, I had that interest. Secondarily, when I graduated high school, I had an opportunity to apprentice at Bucks County Playhouse in New Hope, Pennsylvania. The Playhouse is very famous for introducing shows that just before they go on Broadway, where they test them out and see how they play in front of audiences. And I worked as an intern doing building sets and all this stuff for summer stock for some great actors and actresses that were appearing at that Playhouse during the summer. So I learned a lot about that, and I decided that I thought, geez, I would like very much to be an actor. So I studied professionally with one of the top coaches in Hollywood, and I also studied at UCLA, where I was attending the university there. And it was in my third year at UCLA when I sold a house. I became the youngest, actually at 18, got my license, youngest person in California to get the real estate license. My father was a top broker at that time.
Wow.
And I was literally what they call sitting on a house where, you know, on weekends, people come and look at open houses. And, you know, it's the real estate people usually try to have somebody there to answer any questions or stuff. But one of the people that came was a very prominent film producer, and I got to talking to him and told him I wanted to be an actor, and I kind of spontaneously asked him if let me do a scene for him right there. And I did, and he said, gee, you're really pretty talented. He says, I can send you to an agent. And I said, oh, that would be fantastic. And I contacted this agent, went to see them, and then I got my first taste of Hollywood when the agent said to me, I can't get work for the actors I've got. I would never take a new actor. The only reason I would take you is because this producer sent you to me, and I'm obligated to do it. So don't expect to work for a year. And if you do get a job, it'll be a one-liner. I said, okay. So I left there, and it was a couple of weeks later, I got a call from someone in his office, and they said, there's something going on over at 20th Century Fox, and we'd like you to interview for it. And I said, oh, well, what is it? And they said, oh, I don't know. The lady said, just go over there. We got an appointment at 4:30 in the afternoon. I said, okay. And so the next day I went over to 20th Century Fox, and they let me on, and they said, here, you got to go to this bungalow. And I went to that bungalow, and I met this casting director, and he never said anything. He just asked me some questions about me, and I answered the questions, and he said, would you like to meet the executive producer? Well, I said, sure. I mean, I figured everybody got to meet the executive producer, but that actually is not true, but I didn't know that. So I then went to another bungalow where I met the executive producer, maybe because I hadn't been kicked around in Hollywood, and I was kind of just like, a free spirit. I walked in and I said, hello, sir. And I shook his hand, aggressively, but very nicely. And I think he was taken aback by the fact that I, didn't come in, in fear or something, because he's his executive producer. And he looked at me and he said, you're kind of big for this part. And I think pretty quickly on my feet. I said, well, I promise you, sir, I won't grow anymore. And he laughed. I mean, like, how are you going to stop from growing, right? And he said, would you like to do a screen test? I said, sure. Again, I figured, everybody got to do a screen test. Well, that's not true either, but I didn't know. So I still had no idea what the part was for. And it was a couple of weeks later, I went back to 20th Century Fox. And the first thing I did, which is actually you can see on the internet, was they recorded me doing some judo with a friend of mine, taking some falls, and I broke a board with my hand. At that time, I was a brown belt in karate, later became black belt. And then they said, okay, well, we have a scene to do with another actor. Why don't you go over and run your lines with him? They handed me a single sheet of paper. And on the paper, all it had was a couple of paragraphs, but the paragraphs didn't have the name of the show, didn't have really the full name of the characters. It just was a paragraph that said Bruce with some dialogue, and then Dick with some dialogue. Bruce and Dick. Didn't say Dick Grayson or Bruce Wayne, just right. Bruce and Dick. And they said, okay, you're going to read the part of Dick. And I said, okay. And here we want you to meet this actor. His name is Adam West. So I sat down next to Adam, and he and I started talking. And within 5 minutes, the two of us were laughing. And we never stopped laughing for more than 50 years. I mean, we became like instant friends. He had such a wild, crazy sense of humor. And we just got along great. It's one of those things. Not everybody gets along, but he was just and I just understood his humor, and very, very smart guy. And so then we did this dialogue together. Again, nobody said what this was for, just dialogue, Bruce and Dick. So afterwards they said, okay, great, we're done with that. And I said, well, thank you, and nice to meet you all. And I started to leave. And they said, no, wait a minute. No, we're not done with you yet. Actually, we want you to go over on the other side of that sound stage. There's a dressing room there, and we've got a couple of wardrobe men. They're going to help you get dressed. I said, well, thank you very much, but I'm perfectly capable of dressing myself. They said, oh, no, you don't know. No. You just go over there, and when you get in that dressing room, you'll see that you're going to need some help. I said, well, all right, but I've never needed any help up until now. So I walk across this giant soundstage. I mean, it's like walking 2 blocks. And I get over there and I go into the dressing room, and sure enough, there's a couple of guys there, and they have this, it looks like a giant couch. I mean, it's got to be like 12 feet long. It's just huge. And on this couch is all this stuff, all of this stuff. And I said to them, am I going to put some of this on? They said, no, you're going to put all of it on. I said, what? So these guys helped me get dressed in the most uncomfortable thing I ever wore in my entire life. Never in my entire life have I ever been so uncomfortable. Everything itched or hurt or pinched. There was not any peace in my life. None, zero. I mean, for example, the mask, the way the mask was, it touched my eyelashes. And, it's irritating your eyelashes. It's hard to look and to focus and stuff. And of course, because of that mask, you couldn't see down. You could only see straight ahead. So I nearly broke my neck coming out of the trailer. And then the tights, pull the hair on my leg, and they pinched in uncomfortable places, and the wool vest itched my chest, and the shoes were too tight. And it was horrendous. And as I finally got dressed and I was leaving the dressing room, I guess in my life, I've always had a positive take on things, where you kind of like to make the best of it. And I remember turning to these two wardrobe guys. I said, look, the good news here is that after another 15 or 20 minutes, I'll never have to wear this costume again. Famous last words, right? So then I go to the set, and then I see Adam West, and in his costume, nobody said Batman, and if they'd said it, I never heard of that comic book. I mean, I just never heard where I grew up. Never heard of it. And I didn't know, I still didn't know this was superheroes. I thought maybe this is some Shakespearean piece or something. So anyway, I did the dialogue and stuff like that. And then I left. And I guess over the next 6 weeks, after about 2 weeks, I started getting phone calls from the studio, once or twice a week, saying things like, oh, what is your shoe size? Oh, well, 7.5. And what's your hat size? Well, I don't know. I don't have a hat. Well, go get your head measured. Well, where do I go to get my head measured? I don't know these things, right? So anyway, after 6 weeks, I get a call from these same agents. And the phone call was from a secretary, said, well, we want you to come in and sign contracts. I said, great. Now I'm going to be formally represented by this agency, because they didn't sign anything before, and I wanted to be able to officially say I have some theatrical and television agents. So I went there to sign the contracts, and when I sat down and I looked at these giant, thick contracts, the first thing I saw was 20th Century Fox at the top of the contract. I said, what's this? I said, I thought aren't I signing agency contracts? And they said, oh, no. This is your studio contract. I said, you mean I got the part? They said, you didn't know? I said, no, nobody told me. Well, it turned out that the agents thought the studio told me I had the role, and the studio thought the agents told me I had the role. Wow. So 4 of the last 6 weeks, I had the role, and I had no idea, and I was still wondering if I was going to get the role. And then when I was called in again, to go into the studio, and I met with the executive producer again, he was very nice. His name was William Dozier, and he said, Burt, would you like to know why we selected you? And I said, yes, sir, I would. He said, well, we interviewed over 1,100 young actors from all across the country. A lot of people we saw, a lot of people. And he said, the reason we picked you is because in our minds, forgetting television, forgetting it, if there really was a Robin, I mean like the real thing, we think you personally would be it. So we don't want you to, quote, act. We want you to be yourself, because what you are is, in our minds, Robin. You are Robin. You just be yourself and be enthusiastic. Well, for me, being enthusiastic is like zero effort, right? It's just the opposite. Calming down is the hardest part. So that's what I did for 120 episodes. And when I would work with Adam, the two of us got along so well. We had, I don't know how to say it, it's a chemistry of where people just click. So no matter how he said his lines, I reacted appropriately with the way I said my lines. And of course, if you remember the series, Adam would sometimes speak very slowly. Well, I didn't understand why he did that at first. I thought that was the character he was providing, but it turns out that he had a much more sinister reason. You see, he calculated that this was a 30-minute show, each one of these episodes. And if he talked really slowly, he could occupy most of that 30 minutes of him talking. And he also realized that the more he talked, the less time there was for anybody else to talk or do anything. So he would have these lines, and I mean, he would have paragraphs, right? And I would have like a line like, "You're right, Batman," or "Thank you, Batman." Okay. And so he would do this thing where he'd say, you know, he would do his line, and it's like going on and on. They say, "Adam, you got to speed it up. I mean, there's only a 30-minute show," right? And he would do his line, and then it would come to my line, right, where I was going to say, "You're right, Batman," and I would say, and I start to say right, and he says, "Yes, Robin." And then he'd go with very slow talking to hold that camera. Then we would do these scenes where we have a two-shot. You know, there's two people. Right. In front of the camera. They're catching both of you, trying to, you know, you're having a conversation. Well, during that conversation we would be having, he would often turn and walk right up to the camera, filling his face with that camera. In fact, filling so much that you could only see from his nose to his chin. And they say, "Adam, cut. We can't do this, Adam. This is a two-shot." And so, and he says, "I had to do it." Well, Adam, why did you have to do it? Well, because I was motivated. Well, go motivate yourself back into that two-shot with Burt. And you know, they're all, and then each week we'd have a different director. So, you know, the first couple of shots or half of the first day, he'd be tricking that director and doing this. And then they put their, "Adam, no more. Back there, talk with Burt, let him do his lines. He's only got 3 words. You're right, Batman. You're cutting him off after the first word. Let him have his other 2 words. Please, Adam." You know?
That's amazing.
But I still loved him. You can't help but love this guy. He was so funny. We had such fun together. And you know, we worked terrible long hours. And yet, believe it or not, we had such fun and we had such a similar idea about life and everything that on weekends, once in a while, we'd go out and play tennis. And it was funny because obviously we're in tennis clothes and everything, and we'd be playing tennis, and people on a public court, actually, and people would come out to the next court, and you know, they'd be playing tennis, and then they'd stop, and somebody would look a little closer, and then somebody would say, "Oh my God, it's Batman and Robin playing tennis." You know, because people, unless you know that somebody's going to be there, you know, most people are in their own worlds, right?
Right.
I mean, you're all kind of doing your own thing. And so anyway, we just had a great time. It was a wonderful show, very dangerous. I got hurt a lot. The safety protocols today were not in place then. But in any event, it was a lot of fun other than the costume. And look what it did. It became the #1 and #2 show in the entire world.
Right. And wasn't there a Catholic group that didn't like Robin's costume, and you tried to adjust it, but you couldn't appease them?
Well, yeah, everybody, you know, it's funny. When something is successful, it's like everybody wants to get involved to some extent. You know what I mean?
Right.
Everybody wants to get involved. And this Catholic Legion of Decency had a complaint about the way that I fit in my tights. Well, I mean, obviously, man is not built for tights, right?
Right.
So there was a whole bunch of stuff, all of that, and it created a big ruckus for a while, but it finally, it calmed down a lot. But everybody had to put their 2 cents in. I mean, there were people like psychologists trying to figure out what is the true meaning of the relationship of Batman and Robin, and I mean, just all this stuff. Everybody wanted to be involved because it was so incredibly successful. It was #1 and #2 in the entire world.
Right. And, you know, one thing I love about it, and watching it as a kid, of course, I enjoyed it. And I do remember my dad telling me that when it first came on, he was disappointed because it was tongue-in-cheek and he thought it was going to be serious. But I still loved it, and I still love it now. And what I love about watching it now as an adult is, you know, the humor is on so many different levels. There's a lot of, you know, grown-up humor, double entendre that you just don't notice as a kid. I mean, even something as simple as, I think the commissioner on one episode says, "Oh, he's got bats in his belfry," and Adam West just shudders. You know, like simple jokes like that.
No, we had such great lines. Listen, there was a wonderful some dialogue in the Batman movie where we're in Commissioner Gordon's office as Batman and Robin, and Commissioner Gordon says to Batman, he says, Batman, he says, the thought of these 4 villains, any one of them, the Riddler, the Catwoman, the Joker, the Penguin, could wreak havoc on Gotham City. But the thought of having them all combined together, what do you think they have in mind? And very stoically, Batman says, I think their minimum objective is the entire world. Minimum objective, right?
That's awesome.
And it was that kind of dialogue we had. And honestly, we played it on so many different levels. And one of the reasons that Batman was such a hit is because it appealed to a very broad audience. For children, it was the ultimate hero worship. Who wouldn't want to ride in that Batmobile, racing through the city, climbing walls, fighting heinous villains, rescuing people? It was like the total fantasy. And there were kids that were running around with bath towels held together with the clothespins around their neck, jumping off their couches, wanting to be Batman and Robin.
Oh, yeah.
And then you had the older people, the people that had read the comic book. It was the nostalgia of seeing that comic book being brought to life.
Right.
And then at the time, now this is the 60s when, and I don't think you guys were around, but in the 60s, all the young people, the teenagers, the college kids, nobody wanted to be inside watching television. That was the squarest thing. That would be the worst thing you could be caught doing, is watching television. Everybody wanted to be out cruising on a Friday night through these outdoor restaurants, drive-ins, and trying to pick up girls and stuff. So, but Batman was so cool to these kids and teenagers and college kids, and because of the double meanings that we had. In other words, we took dialogue that was written funny, played straight for kids, worked out great for the adults because of the nostalgia of the comic book. But more than just the dialogue was the style and the innuendo that Adam and I brought to it. We used to say that we put on our tights to put on the world. In fact, we were the only superheroes that wore our underwear on the outside of our clothes. Okay. So so therefore, whenever we had a chance, there were suggestive meanings. You understand?
Yeah.
And stuff. And these college kids, I heard that, and from many that would tell us that on a Tuesday or Thursday night, they would have to get into that cafeteria or wherever they were going to have that television an hour and a half early to get a seat to be able to watch our show for 30 minutes. That far ahead of time. So it was tremendous. Everybody loved it. Something for everybody.
That's amazing. And Justin and I were talking before you came on the show, and Justin, you had mentioned about the holy lines.
Yeah. In terms of this one, I had looked up just if they had an estimate of how many times you actually said it, and they're saying that there's 378 times on camera over the course of the entire series in the movie.
Well, actually, the series only, because the movie put it over 400.
Oh, it did? Okay.
It did, yeah. It did put it over 400. And for the most part, those were written for me. But because there were 32 writers on Batman, and the reason why you had to have 32 writers, just to write a 30-minute show, it takes weeks,
Right.
And when you're churning them out every week, right? 2 episodes a week, it took a lot of writers. And not all of the writers had that Batman style down right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Lorenzo Semple, which was the who wrote the pilot, and he had that great sense of humor. Yeah, he nailed it. Another gentleman named Stanley Ralph Ross, who ended up editing my book, Boy Wonder, My Life in Tights, and he created Wonder Woman, the TV series. He had he wrote 30 some odd episodes of Batman, and he was amazing as well. But some of the writers didn't have the right stuff, so they allowed me to change things as long as it was appropriate to the situation. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And it worked. And I'll tell you what is something really interesting. I've watched other filmmaking with actors where the director said, well, can you say the line this way? Or can you try to get this to the other actor to do this or that? In other words, really directing them. Okay.
Right.
You know that on our series, Adam and I were never directed, not once.
Huh.
And so, I mean, they would say, for example, now you're in the Batmobile in this scene, right? Or you're in front of the Bat computers, is the way the script is written. But in terms of how to say the lines, attitude, all of that, they never, ever said anything. And I'll tell you the reason why. There were several reasons. Number one, the show was so complex to make with all the effects that instead of having a 30-person crew, they had an 80-person crew.
Wow.
And with 80 people paid astronomical amount of money to make this show, they still couldn't hardly get anything to work. I mean, they did finally get it to work, but they were so focused on trying to get these effects to work, the exploding this or the giant birthday cakes or the quicksand birthday cake, or all these things, right?
Yeah.
That they basically left Adam and I alone. And another thing I heard, something interesting, you might kind of a bit of trivia, that when I got my star on Hollywood Boulevard on January 9th of last year, right afterward, it's kind of customary for whoever it is, the celebrity, that they kind of throw like a thank you party, you know, and so I did that. And it was actually, the ceremony was in front of the Guinness Museum of World Records on Hollywood Boulevard, very famous, ideal place to have your star, believe me. But around the corner at the Hollywood Museum, I had rented out the museum and threw a big party for a lot of people in the industry and stuff like that. And one of the people that came to the party his name was Robert Butler, and he was the director that directed the pilot episode of Batman.
Oh, okay.
I had no idea he was going to be there. My press agent had, arranged for lots of people to come and stuff like that, and I hadn't seen him in 55 years.
Wow.
You okay?
That's
hadn't
amazing.
seen this man.
That's cool.
And I was so thrilled to talk to him. I hugged him. I mean, and I remember that because on the first episode, usually on the pilot, the production company will kind of go all out because that's going to be the episode that they use to try to sell it to the network,
Right.
So instead of a 6-day to make 30-minute show, we had 3 weeks. I mean, they really went all out to make this the best show they could make. And he told me a story that I never knew that had happened at the time that I'd like to share with you and your listeners. And he said, Burt, he said, when I came on the set to direct the pilot, the executive producer, William Bodozier, he came over to me. He said, we've just hired this young kid to play Robin. And he's never done anything before. He studied, but he's never performed on television, never done a role. And we don't know if you're going to be able to work with him. Can you go talk to him, pull him aside, talk to him a little bit, and see if you think you're going to be able to work with the guy? Okay?
Yep.
And he said yes. And I remember, I mean, it's just amazing that, some things in life you can remember. And I remember, and that was like on the very first day, him coming over, can I talk to you for a few minutes? And I said, sure. I mean, wow, the director talking to me. You have to understand, it's my first job.
Right.
First time. Never done anything like that. And he asked, I don't remember the questions he asked, but we spoke. And it was obviously about the role and this and that. And he told me at this event right after I got my star 55 years later that he said he went back to the executive producer and producer said, do you think you can work with the guy? He says, let me tell you something. This guy is so good that I'm not going to direct him to do anything because anything I tell him to do is going to be less than what this guy does by himself.
Nice.
It's almost unheard of, And as an example, I'll give you a quick example. On the first episode, this is a Riddler show with Jill St. John as Molly and Frank Gorshin as the Riddler.
Right.
And Batman and Robin get a tip that there's going to be a robbery by the Riddler at this museum. So we drive over in the Batmobile, rush over, right? Obviously breaking speed records or breaking speed laws, I should say.
Right.
And we get there and the camera was set up and you have to understand, I did what I thought was right, In other words, if you get into something and you're really into it, you can forget in a way that you're doing it in front of a camera and you're just doing it. You're just doing it. So instead of opening the door and getting out, as most people would, do with a car, especially with the Batmobile, very heavy, and the door very heavy. I just jumped up on top of the door and walked to the back fin. It has a fin going. The Batmobile has fins going on either side of the back,
right?
And then jumped off. Well, then I heard the director say, "Cut! Burt, what are you doing?" I said, I just, you know what I mean? And I just got on the car and walked to the end and jumped off. So you got to tell us if you're going to do something different. We thought you were coming out the door. And I said, "Oh, no, I didn't know." And they said, and the camera guys were saying, "I can't follow him." And so now but the director said, "I really liked what he did." I mean, it was just so unexpected, and it worked. Okay, so now they took an extra 45 minutes to lay track down on the ground. They put plywood, and then they lay the steel bars, and they have a dolly that with rubber wheels that they push the camera truck along so they can pan along with you. And they had me recreate that thing. But that was something that was spontaneous. Now, a little piece of more trivia is that George Barris, who created the Batmobile, he was there.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I didn't know he was there. And I didn't know that he had 2 other people with him, and all 3 of them were about to have a heart attack, and I was going to ruin their paint job. Oh man, were they? And later on, the producer said, "We told him, don't you dare go bother that actor. Don't you dare go near him. I don't care how mad you are about your paint job."
That's amazing,
right? I mean, it had like 35 coats of paint on this,
wow.
And I'm walking on a fin that came to a point. I mean, if anything, it was very easy to have damaged it. I didn't damage anything, but they were, hysterical that it would be damaged, because what are you going to do? How are you going to fix 35 coats of paint before the next shot? So anyway, it worked out great, but that just shows you the kind of crazy stuff that can happen, on a set.
That's amazing. Hey folks, I just wanted to take a minute here to tell you about the hosting service that we use at Haven Podcasts. Podserve.fm. Podcast hosting has never been easier. They do all the work to get your podcast on Apple Podcasts and other major podcast networks. They help you navigate the podcasting world, whether you're brand new or have years of experience. Folks, I can't tell you how happy I am with their service. When I first started this podcast, I searched around intensely for the right hosting platform. I found Podserve and used their simple 4-step process, and in a short amount of time, my podcasts were on the internet and available through all the major podcast networks. And their customer support is unreal. Every time I goof things up and make a mistake, like posting the wrong show to the wrong feed, I email them, and I kid you not, within minutes I get a response and the problem is resolved. And they're the only podcasting host that actually helps you get listeners. Other podcast hosts stop at podcast upload and don't help promote your podcast. Well, Podserve makes sure your podcast is seen by thousands of people. The promotion is free, and they put you on podparadise.com, which has over 5,000 visits a day from avid podcast listeners and is growing every day. Each day, Pod Paradise selects 5 podcasts to spotlight on their front page. Maybe yours could be there soon. Podserve's pricing is simple. Only $19 a month. That's it. No tiered pricing platform, just one low fee. For $19 a month, you get unlimited storage, unlimited podcasts, free podcast promotion, your podcast on all platforms, detailed download analytics, one-on-one customer support. You pay month to month, and you can cancel at any time. And when you sign up, you get 14 days free. You don't even have to give them your credit card. I love their service so much I put a reminder in my phone to add my credit card when the 14 days was almost up. I couldn't give them my $19 fast enough. I'm telling you, I really didn't believe it until I actually signed up and saw my podcasts on everything from iTunes to Stitcher and Spotify and more in a ridiculously short amount of time. So if you've got a podcast and you don't have a hosting platform, I highly recommend podserve.fm. Check them out.
Prepare for a spine-tingling, nerve-shattering podcast featuring all your favorite monsters. You won't believe your ears when you listen to Monster Kid Radio. Hear your host, Derek M. Cook, and his ever-rotating stable of guests discuss your favorite classic and sometimes not-so-classic monster movies. Subscribe to Monster Kid Radio through iTunes or Stitcher, or visit monsterkidradio.net before the next weekly episode of Monster Kid Radio. Go through the archives for interviews with Sarah Karloff, Victoria Price, and Joel Hodgson. Listen to the discussions about movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon, Island of Terror, and King Kong. And don't forget convention coverage from Monster Bash and the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival, Classic Monsters, Modern Talk, and the Head of Rondo Hatton. Only on Monster Kids Radio.
And that's a deep cockpit too. I've sat in that, and I can totally attest that the current owner does not want you touching the paint or jumping up on that at all. But,
no,
that's deep. It's like sitting in a boat. That's the only way I can really describe it, because you're so recessed, and it seems like it has like just this unforgiving sort of wooden, I guess you'd call it like dashboard.
Well, no, ours wasn't wooden on the original car. Okay, which, by the way, was later sold for $3.6 million.
Wow!
You know,
wow.
And what's so interesting about it is that it wasn't as nice as, I mean, it was perfect on the outside and dashboard and everything great, but on the floor they had it wasn't really finished on the floor because they had to mount cameras and lights inside of it on the floor to get lighting up on Adam and I as we were, sitting there. But it was a great car. It was a great experience doing it. But I'd like to do different things. Like I would jump over the door to get in and out. I didn't always open. I mean, sometimes I opened the door.
Right.
But the thing is that because I was doing whatever I felt was right, the camera crew was always afraid of me. Like, what is he going to do now? Is he going to, and because everybody's on a time thing. Everybody worries about time. Oh, we got to get the shot. We got to get the shot. And there's a very famous phrase in television and filmmaking, which is hurry up and wait.
Right.
Oh, Bert, we got to have you in makeup right now. Oh, Bert, we got to have you in wardrobe. You got to go right now, Bert, right now. Everybody's always panicking. Everybody's so nervous, right? And then you get there and you wait. And you wait. And when you're filming a show, which again for me, I had no idea about it, but I would sit there and wait at least 45 minutes before every single shot, and then I would work for 30 seconds.
Wow.
And then I'd go back and wait another 45 minutes. And just think about that.
Yeah.
All day long, every single day. Okay. And then, of course, if they had a second take or something, but I'm still telling you, within 5 minutes, at the most, even if you had a bunch of second or third or fourth takes, it's still over.
Right.
And now, we got to go get the film. Oh, the camera's got a problem, or the sound, or, oh, we got to relight this, or, there's so much involved in making it. But we had the best pros, and look how beautiful the show turned out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I read an interview with you that said that Adam drove like a maniac and he cracked one of the Batmobiles up, and then you cracked it up a couple times. Is that true?
Not quite. He loved to race. Okay, he would gun this thing, and it was so funny because he was Batman. He'd been around. Everybody, all the crew looked at him like he could do no wrong. Right? Me. Anything, if I just came too close to the edge or do this, this kid, what I mean? and yet I love those people and I got along with them, but they knew I was a kid. And you have to understand, here I was 21 years of age. The closest person in age to me was Adam at 37,
right?
38, I should say. He was 17 years older than me. And then all of the crew members were like in their 50s or 60s, because they always have the most experienced people, everybody doing the stuff. So I was like, it was like my childhood, I guess the older part of my childhood, where I was just becoming really an adult, but, was in a very serious, very somber, like, you got to be really careful. And there's so many things you could trip over and break your neck or on a you got with all the cables and all that stuff. But I quickly got used to it, and and it was fun to make it, my gosh, the stars. Oh, every week I was.
Oh yeah.
I was the kid in the candy store. It was somebody that I either watched on television or had seen in movies.
Now, Adam said that you didn't know sometimes on a given day you'd walk onto the set and you had no idea what movie star was going to be guest starring on that episode, and it kind of made him nervous. Did you ever have that feeling as well?
No, I didn't because, and I don't remember him saying that, but, you know, you have to understand when you're doing this, you're so involved with your portion of it, right? That I don't even know what's coming next. I mean, it could be the whole day is just scenes in the Batcave, right? Or driving or this or that. And then all of a sudden the next day, there you are. There's this huge set with all the villains and the villainous' girlfriends and the henchmen and all of that stuff. I didn't really follow it because I was so involved with what I was doing and making sure that I memorized my lines and were ready to get to work.
You got to tell us about some of these people, like Frank Gorshin. I mean, he was an impressionist. He did so much comedy. What was he like?
Nicest man in the world. After the series, he even came out to my house, and he was deathly afraid of dogs. Wow. And we have the biggest dogs in the world here, right? But such a nice man. And we had some great conversations, and I adored him. It got to where we were like a big family, and everybody really cared for each other. It was he was wonderful, and his laugh. I mean, he had a rubber face. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. He could just contort his face and his voice, and he was just an amazing, wonderful, sweet human being. And yet he played this just horrible, evil Riddler.
Right. And speaking of the villains, I read that Frank Sinatra had accepted the role of the Joker, but he had done it right after Cesar Romero signed for it.
Well, he didn't accept the role because he wanted the role.
Oh, okay.
But the role had been previously offered to and accepted by Cesar Romero. And so he was upset that he couldn't have that role. But, it worked out. It worked out great. Cesar was great. And he had a wonderful laugh. And I must tell you, there were so many stars that wanted to be on Batman, and there weren't enough roles, right? I mean, you're talking about 2 episodes to make a full week's show, and that took 6 days to make. And there was just no, and there's only so many. So what the producers did, because so many celebrities wanted to be on the show, was they created that scene of walking up the side of the building where a window would open, and the first one was Sammy Davis Jr.,
right?
Jerry Lewis, or Don Ho, or Colonel Klink, or Lurch, or White, or Dick Clark. I mean, all of these people made guest appearances, and oh my God, their kids were, driving them crazy. You got to get on Batman. You got to get on Batman.
That's amazing. There was one story I heard. One of my favorite actors, Vincent Price. I guess him and Adam West were supposed to be throwing eggs at you, and they kind of overdid it on purpose. Do you recall that?
Well, of course. Oh, I'll never forget. It was a scene where I've been captured by Egghead, and he's got me got his arm around my neck, holding me, and Batman comes in to rescue me. And when he comes in, during their dialogue, that he cracks like 2 eggs on my head, and then then Batman says something and he lets go of me. Well, the 2 of them decided to have a little fun, and what they did is they purposely messed up their lines after each take. And see, what started off where I get 2 eggs cracked on the head, and then they have their dialogue. So they thought, well, it'll be fun. Let's just mess up like 5 or 6 takes. And it was like more than 12 eggs were broken on my head. And I'll tell you something, it doesn't hurt, but after 12 eggs, it's starting to sting. And I got this, egg shampoo type thing going down the back of my neck, under my shirt, into my tights. I mean, it was a sticky mess. And then I realized that they would purposely done that. So what happened is when the Egghead lets go of me, I'm supposed to pick up a half a dozen eggs and just throw at him. Well, I didn't do that. I was like furious. I picked up a full dozen eggs, and I went over and I hit him so hard on the top of his egg that his egg moved. The top part of his head. But it was still fun. And we had, of course, a giant egg fight, and I was a pitcher, as you mentioned earlier. And I just had some fun. I thought, these crew guys, they're always teasing me. They're always kind of making fun of me. I mean, they wanted to, because I was the kid, right? Somebody to pick on. So when it came to throwing the eggs, and we're supposed to throw them at the villains and I mean, they're like hundreds of eggs being thrown. I am purposely, throwing the eggs at the crew, hitting the crew with these eggs, the cameramen and stuff. Okay, and then you're getting hit with real eggs, and they're all over you and stuff like that. And then they started picking up eggs and throwing at us, and finally they had to stop the whole thing. And everybody got yelled at because it took forever to clean things up. You got egg in the camera lens. I mean, it was. But we had fun, it was a lot of fun.
That's great. Yeah, it sounds like it, especially with Vincent Price. I've heard that he's known to often make it so that everyone can have fun on a set that he's on.
He was very nice to me, although I must tell you, I remember as a child watching The Raven. And when he first came on that set, it's like I had kind of like a butterfly in my stomach, that moment when you see somebody that was kind of fearsome, what I mean, and it frightened
Absolutely.
You. But it was such a nice man, and it worked out wonderful.
Nice. I mean, the list could go on forever. The Burgess Meredith, Julie Newmar, Roddy McDowell, Milton Berle, Victor Buono. I mean, did you have a favorite one? Like, were you happy when one of them would come back to reprise their role?
I enjoyed every minute working with these actors. Every one of them was somebody that I had great respect for. And like I said, I was like a kid in the candy store. Everything looked fantastic and everything was great. And it was just, everybody was nice to me. And that was I just had a really good time.
Right. Now, what about Bruce Lee? I guess when you acted with him, it was his first filmed fight scene, and you guys became friends in real life. Is that correct?
Well, we were friends before that.
Oh, nice.
We lived in the same complex of condos, and he and I used to spar together. I mean, really spar, really, And on Batman, the executive producer, William Dozier, who produced Batman, also was producing the Green Hornet, which he was introducing in the next season on ABC.
Right.
And what better way to pre-introduce the show, to create some activity, to have Green Hornet and Kato, Van Williams, and Bruce Lee come on our show to appear and have some scenes with Batman and Robin, the #1 show in the world. So when we had the fight scene on Batman, they wouldn't let us do it really authentically. Everything is done. You have to understand, there was no blood on Batman.
Right.
I mean, there was violence, but nobody really got hurt. You'd see somebody pick up a chair or a table and slam it down on somebody, and Batman would fall, but in 2 seconds later, he's up again. Right. It was stylized so that it could be enjoyed by children and nothing where there's real blood or real danger.
Right.
So they wanted us to keep the style of fighting like that kind of style, but it was fun. And it is true. The great piece of trivia, Bruce Lee, who became the most famous martial artist in cinema in history, his first fight scene of his career was fighting me on Batman.
That's amazing.
Wow.
That's amazing. You also had Chad and Jeremy, the singing duo, on the show. Did you get to know them at all?
No, they just came in for one day of work. They were very nice, and I loved their music and stuff, and certainly they played, in the show. I mean, it was great. Leslie Gore was on our show, too. I mean, what a great musical artist. She played like Robin is to Batman. She was to Catwoman. She was like Catwoman's assistant, and her name was Pussycat.
Right. That's right. And do you remember working with David Lewis, who played Warden Crichton?
I remember meeting him several times, but, I don't remember having, conversation with him. I don't know why, but, a lot of times one thing or another, like, oh, Burt, you got to get back into makeup, or, oh, you got to go do this, or, got to go change your cape, or, there's always something. It's like you have no peace. So you're waiting and waiting and waiting. And while you're waiting, you're having to do this or that, or this or that, or this or that. So you can't even relax. In other words, you would think if you have 45 minutes between shots, you could just pull out a nice book and read it. But you never have the privacy. Oh, we got to have this. Oh, we got to do this. Oh, no, they got to try this on. Oh, my gosh.
Right.
And it wears you down by the end of the day. I mean, you are exhausted, and the lights, you have to understand, this is not today's filmmaking where they have cool lights that can be very bright but cool. We had these giant arc lamps on Batman. And these things, you'd be under that and you're sweating in like 5 minutes. These huge, powerful lights.
Right.
And so and then sometimes Adam and I, by the late afternoon, being under these hot lights, something would make us laugh, and then we'd laugh through a bunch of takes. And the director would get panicky. You know, one director said, "You two are going to laugh me out of the business." You know, I mean, we just, you know, you just get. I mean, here you're in a costume and it's uncomfortable, and you're sweating, and the hot lights, and you know, and you're like almost dizzy. But you know, it all came out great, and it looked great, and they edited it beautifully, and the music was fantastic.
Oh yeah,
think of all those effects, visual effects with the pows and the zaps and the whams and the sound effects. I mean, this was a fantastic show. It was so far ahead of its time. Nobody had ever done anything like it. And what was so cool is that the crew, even the crew members got in on it. You know, everybody got in on the style. Like one of the things that I didn't understand was why is it that whenever they filmed the villain's hideout, it was always filmed at an angle? I didn't understand it. I even said one time to one of the camera guys, I said, you know, what's the matter with your camera? Nothing. Well, why is your angle there? He said, you don't mean you don't know why we film it at an angle? I said, no, why? Why are you filming the villain's hideout at an angle? He says, because they're crooked. Oh, okay. You mean, the camera's crooked. Oh, my gosh. I never thought of that.
That's amazing.
But in other words, everybody got in on it, and everybody had fun. And that's what made our show such a hit, is that so many people added their creativity to Batman.
Right. And one of the things I learned was that because the mask didn't cover that much of your face, it would have been impractical to have a stuntman take your place. So you would have do a lot of your own stunts. And you even quoted as saying, I'm beginning to wonder if Batman and Robin's life in the comics is as dangerous as ours. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened, like with dynamite going off near your head and stuff?
Well, I had a stuntman, but they only used him for shots that were a great distance away because he didn't look like me.
Right.
And I got my first taste of it on the first day of filming, the very first shot in Bronson Canyon, where they were filming the famous scene of the Batmobile coming out of the Batcave. And they, you know, this is like, God, I had to be there at 6 a.m. and makeup at 6:30 and on the set in wardrobe at 7 a.m. And they said, okay, Burt, you know, we're going to have the scene where you're going to come out of the Batcave in the Batmobile. We've got the Batmobile in this cave. Walk up there and go in the cave, get in the Batmobile, and we're going to film you coming out. And I said, okay. So I go up there and you know, I go into this cave and it's dark, you know, and it takes you know, a few minutes for your eyes to adjust. I found the Batmobile. I got in there and I looked over and I saw what I thought was Adam, but I said, Adam? And he said, no, my name's Hubie. I said, oh, because he's dressed like Batman. I said, well, what are you doing here? He said, well, the studio hired me. It's a very dangerous shot we're about to do, and they don't want to take a chance of Adam West getting hurt. So they hired me. I said, oh, dangerous? Oh, yeah, we got to come out at 55 miles an hour. We got to make a sharp left turn, skid the back end of the car around, and race down on the road. And, you know, he says, look, he says, I love it. He says, the more bones I get broken, the more money I get paid.
Okay.
Oh, I said, okay. So you're a stuntman, right? Yeah, of course. And I said, gee, do I have a stuntman? He said, yeah, you have one. I said, well, that's great. Where is it? Well, last time I saw him, he was having coffee with Adam West. And so I hear him say, okay, roll it up, get ready to shoot. And you know, and I said, wait a minute, there's a terrible mistake. And one of the assistant directors comes running. Burt, what's the problem? We're ready to shoot. I said, yeah, but this man's a stuntman. He says, I know it. He said, yeah, but he's telling me this is a dangerous shot. Yeah, we know that, Burt. He says, yeah, but he tells me I have a stuntman, but he's having coffee with Adam West. Yes, what's the point? The point is, why am I sitting here if it's so dangerous that you're having Adam protected by having a stunt? Why aren't you having a person stand in for me? Oh, we can't use him. Oh, okay. Well, why can't you use him? Well, he doesn't look like you. Oh, well, why did you hire him if he didn't look like him? Couldn't find anybody else. Oh, So you just sit there, Bert, and hold on, because it's going to be coming out real fast. So I'm it's like, what are you going to do, right?
Right.
You're so dumbfounded by the answer. There's no other solution, right? And so I said, okay, well, where's my seatbelt? Oh, no seatbelt.
Oh, geez.
What am I going to hold on to? Well, there's no handles. There's nothing to hold on to. All I've got is this 1/4 inch thick, flexible, it wasn't even plexiglass. It was just plastic. It was the windshield.
Oh,
you know what I mean? I mean, that was our windshield. And I'm holding on to that. I mean, I hold on and I can squeeze it like a piece of rubber. I mean, it was incredibly flimsy. And we're going to be coming out at 55 miles an hour. Sure enough, out at 55 miles an hour, they go straight to the camera. The stuntman was perfect. He made that sharp left turn, but then something unexpected happened. My door flew open. And it was supposed to fly open. And it knocked the cameraman off the camera truck. Okay, and he was injured. And it knocked the camera over. The whole camera truck flipped over. Okay, I was thrown towards the opening, and the centrifugal force of throwing me out, of making that sharp left turn. And I just threw my left arm behind me, and I don't know how it happened, but I luckily wrapped my little finger on my left hand around the gear shift knob. I mean, it's 1 in 10 million that could have happened, but it kept me from falling out.
Wow.
But when it kept me from falling out, the tremendous force of the centrifugal force pulled my finger out of joint.
Good heavens.
And I don't know if it's ever happened. That's an incredibly painful thing. So here the car comes to a stop. The dust is everywhere. One of those giant arc lamps falls over. If it had hit somebody, it would have killed them. No question about it. Okay. And they come running. Bert, are you okay? I said, yes, but my hand is hurting me. And I didn't have a chance to take my glove off. You could see through the glove. My finger had already swollen up like twice the size of the glove. Wow. I mean, of the finger of the glove. And they said, "Oh, your finger's out of joint. We got to get you to a doctor." And we know how painful that is. And I said, "Okay," because it's really killing me. And so I get out of. They helped me out of the car, and I said, "The Vatmobile." I said, "Okay, well now where do I go to get in the car that's going to take me to the hospital?" "Oh, Bert, we can't go now." "What do you mean?" "We didn't get to shop."
Oh,
wow.
"Oh, and we've got a whole crew here. It's costing us $30,000 every 10 minutes, Bert." And,
oh my God.
So you got to stay. I ended up doing that shot 3 more times.
Oh my God.
Okay. And even though it worked, they said, "Oh, let's shoot another one." It's like, oh my gosh, you can do it, do it again. Oh, fantastic. Do it again. Well, if it's so fantastic, why am I doing it again? Just as a protection. Right. And it was noon before I left for the hospital. This had happened at 7:15, 7:30 in the morning.
Oh my God.
And for those first 4 days in a row, I went to the emergency hospital with 2nd-degree burns, with 2x4 had landed on my nose and broke my nose.
Ooh.
When I'm tied down on a table, and they were supposed to have a breakaway wall, and the studio forgot to build a breakaway wall. And there's no time to have a breakaway wall, so they used 2 half sticks of dynamite and nearly blew the entire soundstage down. And this 2x4 was blown off and fell down, hit me in the nose, broke my nose.
Wow.
My arms were tied down and couldn't even protect my face. I mean, it was a pretty dangerous show. And I'm telling you, by the end of the first week, I wasn't sure I was going to survive the first week. But I'll tell you what, the studio was very smart. They took out this huge multi-million-dollar life insurance policy on me.
Oh, my God.
Okay, and I could swear by the end of the 3rd season, I thought they were trying to collect on that policy.
Yeah, didn't they dangled you by your toes over 3 hungry Bengal tigers, and that scared the crap out of you, right?
Well, just dangling them was bad enough, but when and you have to understand, the director and the cameraman were in a steel cage 8 feet above my head, right? And these cats could jump higher than I was only like, 12 feet above them, and they can jump 15 feet.
Oh my God.
And so the director says, "Can you get them to do more stuff?" And so they were tapping around me, and they said, no, that's not enough. Do more. They hung meat over my head.
Oh.
And these tigers were jumping up at the meat. Okay. And I'm pulling, straining. I mean, I'm in fear of my life. And afterwards they said, "Bert, your acting was fantastic." What do you mean? I'm scared to death for my life.
Wow.
That's Batman for you.
Oh my God! I guess Shelley Winters said she was lucky to get out of Batman alive because she was appalled at the lack of safety protocols on the set.
Oh yeah, it was something. But you see, again, I didn't know. I didn't know that there was, these safety issues and stuff like that.
Right.
It was my first show, and I'm the kid who's coming in green, and so I have to kind of put up with everything. I can't really be a person to complain, or I just have to kind of take it and survive.
Right. Is it true that Adam West would ask them to check the brakes on the Batmobile before he had to do a scene because he'd have to stop so close to the cameras he didn't want to wipe the crew out?
Yeah, well, there were some brake problems with the Batmobile. That's the reason he asked.
Oh, geez.
Because there was some stuff where one time they didn't stop properly, and it almost, ruined the set because he couldn't stop it. So, he wouldn't do it on every shot, but occasionally he would do it when he thought there was going to be, you have to really, race with it or something,
Right. So now, while you were shooting the show, I guess there was a time where you were visiting your in-laws, and apparently when you got to their house, there were 175 calls from fans within 45 minutes, and so many kids outside the house that you had to call the cops. Do you remember that story?
No, I don't think that happened.
Oh, okay, because I read it in a couple.
That happening.
I remember in a couple of papers, and they basically, when you called the cops said, "Okay, I'll be right there. Can I bring my kids?"
Well, let me tell you, even as of 2 years ago, I make appearances, and like I was the Grand Marshal at the Huntington Beach 4th of July parade, which is like the biggest in the nation, and there was more than 100,000 people there. And when you get more than 100,000 people, or near 100,000, the Department of Homeland Security actually provides the security. And even then, and this is like 50 years later, they had all these FBI agents. They were asking me for their autograph for their kids. So that's not something that I would find to be unusual, but I don't remember that thing happening. And I must tell you, whenever you have a certain amount of celebrity status, there's a lot of things that, well, it's like a fish story. It starts with as a minnow in Los Angeles and becomes a whale by the time it gets to New York.
Right.
In fact, they have a famous saying in show business: when you sneeze in Los Angeles, they say, "God bless you" in New York.
Yeah. Oh man. So now, tell us a little bit about the making of the Batman movie. Is it true that really part of the reason that they made it was because they wanted a bat boat and Batcopter, but they just couldn't afford it for the show?
No, I don't recall that. I don't recall that either. But it was way over budget. There's no question about that. There was no question about that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And what was Lee Merriweather like?
Oh, very sweet. I mean, every actor on Batman was incredibly nice. I was thrilled, and they were so nice to me, and I was nice to them. And you don't have as much time to talk with them as you might think. Again, and it's such an irony because you're sitting there for 45 minutes, but you start to have a conversation and say, can we see you for a minute? Or we got to go try this on, or, you never really have a chance to sit there for an extended period of time, at least that I didn't, and, to talk to people, but you get enough to talk, and you find out that everybody is really nice, and you love being with people there.
Did you know at the time that the show was having such an impact on the film industry? Because, films were starting to adapt the tongue-in-cheek style of the Batman show. Like there was a Dean Martin picture called Texas Across the River, and that's kind of quoted as one of the first movies to really do that, and it was totally inspired by Batman. Did you sense that the show was really having a profound impact?
I knew the show was having an impact, but I didn't think it was impacting the film and television industry. But I'll tell you something you might find interesting. If you think about it, look at all the superhero movies that have come on, following our show. I mean, even now, there's all these superhero movies. They go on and on and on. And something we did on our show that has shown up in filmmaking that I must tell you is something that I didn't even notice for years, but I notice now, and I see it on almost every film, where at a moment that is so critical and so dangerous in a movie, and something really horrible is about to happen, the stars can have a dialogue between them where there's this comic humor for a brief minute. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if we get out of this alive, I'm never letting you come over to my house or whatever, that kind of a thing, And it started on Batman, and I'll give you a typical scene where this happened. There was a scene that we were after the Joker, and we're there in this warehouse, and all of a sudden 8 of these huge henchmen of the Joker are there, and that Batman and Robin are going to have to fight him. And I have this dialogue. I say, "Gosh, Batman, there's 8 of them against 2 of us. Odds in our favor." Okay, because there's only 8 of them, right? and that kind of stuff, translated down the line, and I've seen it in Bad Boys movies and all, and all the superhero films,
right,
where they have this kind of levity in the middle of something that's super dangerous.
Right. So after Batman, you started to move into doing personal appearances. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because you did quite a bit of that for a long time, right?
25 years. For 25 years, I did 300 cities a year.
Nice.
And like there's only 365 days. I was doing 300 cities. Now, some of those were 3 cities in one day, but I was gone 11 months of the year on the road, and it's like living out of a suitcase. That was for 25 years, and then I've done appearances for 50 years,
right,
making appearances, signing. I think I've done over 7,000 appearances, signed about 8.5 million autographs.
That's amazing.
That is that's tough. It wears you down.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And there's just no way to, and all these flights and here and there and stuff like that. And it was fun. Don't miss it. I had a great time and stuff like that. But it was nice to take a break from that.
Yeah. I mean, you did a lot of cool stuff. Like you went to schools and taught, bicycle safety and stuff.
Right.
A lot of that seemed like it was very rewarding.
I'll tell you something. What is rewarding, and a lot of people say, I don't understand, how can you meet all these people? Don't you get sick of people? And I say, no, not really. And I'll tell you why. Because the people that would come up to see us, maybe because of the style of our show, but when I would meet people and they would come up, and it was like all of a sudden these adults now that were kids then, okay, but even more recently, when they would come up, there's something that happens when they really meet you where the adults become like kids again.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
right.
There was a typical situation, a mom and dad and their 2 kids, and they would come up and then the father would say to maybe one son, "Oh, look, this is Robin. This is Robin. This was my favorite superhero." And his son looking at him, "Dad, talking like this for?" And then the mother would say something like, "Oh, and I was in love with Robin." Mom, what are you talking like that? I mean, so for me, it was very entertaining, right? Because you're seeing people that all of a sudden they're transported back in time,
right,
to something that was very memorable. Because remember, we were in people's homes. We were there right after their dinner.
Right.
We were there when everybody's together in a family, and people have fond memories of family time together. And every week, twice a week, we're in their home with them for 3.5 years.
Right.
It's always been very touchy. Now, people would come up to me and say, believe it or not, I could have gone out and done wrong things in my life. I watched your show and I decided to become a firefighter. I decided to get in law enforcement, wow. Something positive.
That's cool. That's cool. And, there's actors like Adam West and even William Shatner and Anthony Geary, who played Luke Spencer on General Hospital. They all kind of were so closely identified with the characters they played that they had to distance themselves from the characters for a while. And eventually all 3 of them would come back and embrace that character and understand that, the fans are what made them. Did you ever go through anything like that? Do you ever feel I need to distance myself from Robin, or did that just kind of stay with you the whole time?
Well, how do you distance yourself from something that they select you to be yourself? Because,
right.
I mean, if you think about it for a minute, like when I would, these last 2 movies for Warner Brothers that I did animated with the voice, they said, "What does it feel like coming back and doing Robin again?" I said, "Well, it doesn't feel any different because, the character that they wanted me to play was myself. So it's very easy to be yourself. And in fact, I got a very nice compliment from the executive producer. He said, "I don't know how you do it, Burt, But when you say those lines, you sound exactly. None of us, we're blown away here. We can't understand how after 50 years, there is not the slightest difference in sound in your voice. You know, and they said it's almost scary. That was what the executive said. It's almost scary that somebody could sound exactly alike, you know, and they loved it, you know. So it all worked out, and it's worked out very good for me. And I've had a lot of fun doing it. You know, it's been a lifetime. And people say, well, how about like fact that, you know, you didn't do a lot of other roles? I said, well, actually I starred in 40 films for television, but this was such a successful role. And the way I look at it is you could have a glass full of water or glass full of, you know, in terms of the things you do with a bunch of different shows you've done, or one show that was so outstanding, you know, and it took up it still filled your glass. And that's the way I look at it.
That's amazing. Have you ever met John Duncan? He was the guy that played Robin in the original Batman and Robin serials from 1949. Because I read an interview with him in 1980 where he claimed that he was offered the role of Robin, but he turned it down because he wanted like $1,500 an episode or something. And then after he saw your success, he was kind of kicking himself over it. Did you ever get to meet him?
No, and I never heard that story that he was offered the role.
Interesting.
Let me tell you, they interviewed 1,100 people. Now it's possible he could have been one of the 1,100, but you know, no, that never happened. And when you think about it, here I screen tested with Adam West,
right?
And they had several other people that were, you know, screen testing with, like Lyle Wagner had another young actor screen test as Robin. Right. So no, I don't think. I mean, can I tell you? It's like so many things. Stories can be out and this and that. Some things are true. Some things are exaggerated. Some things were never true.
Yeah, I wonder if he was exaggerating, because it was a direct interview with him from 1980, and I was thinking the same thing when I was reading it. I'm like, this doesn't sound true, you know?
No, because that serial was made at the time I was born.
Right.
So he would have had to be. Would have had to be at least 20 years older than me.
Right.
So he had to be, if you know, and I don't know how old he was at that time, but he certainly unlikely could have played a 15-and-a-half-year-old, because he didn't look 15-and-a-half when he was doing the serial in 1946.
Right.
They were making the show in 1966, 20 years later.
Yeah, he would have been way too old.
That doesn't make sense, you know.
Interesting. So there was a time when you were doing an appearance and some college kids stole your Robin costume. Do you remember that story?
I was at Harvard getting an award for being Man of the Year at Harvard University, and some couple of Harvard students came up and said, you know, we're security and we've got to, because I had my costume there, we got to watch your costume. One of them was Colin. You know, I mean, he has his own television show.
Conan O'Brien.
Conan O'Brien. And that's true. That was true. That really happened. I got it back after a day, but it did. I mean, that's a $500,000 costume, you know, that we auctioned. I donated to charity, and they auctioned off.
Right.
You know, for kids, for helping, you know, underprivileged children. So that was a little bit tense, but it really did happen. And Conan O'Brien, he was the guilty party.
That's funny. That's hilarious. He did something like, he said a Riddler line or something about the costume. Like, I'd have to look that up, but it was basically like, you know, riddle me this, where's your costume, kind of thing.
Yep. I remember that. He really did.
That's amazing.
But he didn't do it when he was getting the costume. He was acting like he was the security. It was afterwards,
right?
That hours later, you know, that there was some kind of a recording that was delivered. You know,
that's amazing.
That's too funny.
But it all worked out. It was fun. It was a little tense for a while, because I mean, the studio made some phone calls, and that costume got back real quick.
Yeah. Now, is it true that when you were in Baltimore and Chattanooga, people tried to shoot at you?
No, there was one instance where somebody who was had some mental issues, I believe, was in line. Tall gentleman. I had all this security and all these kids and all this tall gentleman, and he had a gun.
Oh, wow.
He pulled it out, and it was weird because there was a moment, or it seemed like eternity, but where the security, and these are policemen around, but they're watching the crowd. They're not watching when it happened, but then all of a sudden you know what I mean? They saw it, and then I kind of dove out of the way. They didn't shoot, and they, apprehended him and arrested him.
Wow.
But it was, you have to understand, you're sitting behind a table, and your chair is tucked into the table. You can't just push it back real easy, and you're in costume. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was, but I just, I got out of the way real quick.
Right.
And I was, you're caught off guard. I mean, although I must tell you, I sensed something wasn't right. We all have certain senses, and you see somebody in line that's this big tall person, and everybody else is a kid. You know what I mean? And they're kind of, quiet and strange, and you know what I mean?
Right.
It just makes you think, well, why is this person here?
Yeah.
So I was a little bit more guarded. I wasn't completely taken by surprise, but you don't see somebody normally coming to get an autograph and pull a gun.
Right, right.
And that could be part of your martial arts training as well, like anticipating some sort of issue.
Yeah, but look, your body is under a table. I mean, there's not like a lot you could do that quickly. And if somebody is holding a gun pointed directly at you, you don't have a lot of time to make any real moves other than to get out of the way.
Yeah, I just mean
really
to get out of the way.
Thing to do is get the heck away. Get out of the range of the gun.
There was one report I read, and I'm just curious as to how true this was. It says I think it was in 1975 in Norman, Oklahoma, you supposedly sent 4 guys to the hospital by using karate on them because they attacked you. Is that like a publicity thing?
I don't remember. I remember, believe it or not, I remember. I don't know about that. And I must tell you, 7,000 appearances.
Right.
Even though, but I do remember fight scenes with the stuntman that got out of hand. But the stuntman actually didn't pull punches, and then they hit me, and I really hit them back.
Oh, wow.
No, that was real, and it could have happened. I don't recall it. I really, when you know something, the smartest thing to do is try to stay out of a fight.
Right. Right.
You try to avoid the problem if you can. This is all about being able to protect yourself.
Right.
And not use it to start altercations.
Right. Oh, definitely. So what can you tell us about Entertainment Management Corp? Because you managed like Henry Winkler and Mark Hamill and Paul Michael Glaser.
Well, there was other fan clubs. I had a company that was doing, and I had a rock group, the number 1 rock group in the world at the time, ABBA, the most selling albums in the world. I did all of the concert merchandising and fan club and stuff for that. And that was fun. And I also had another company called Entertainment Licensing, where I licensed to help them get products out that had images like of Starsky and Hutch and some of the current TV shows that were on products, and so I always had kind of a business mind as well. So I enjoyed being active. I work like here in my life now. I work 7 days a week, and I can't imagine not working and doing something creative.
Right. You had a lot going on. And didn't you, I saw one where it said you were working with a chemist to create a glow-in-the-dark substance that you could put on T-shirts and posters and stuff. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh, I've been in all kinds of things and had fun doing it, and always trying to do something creative, trying to, bring something to the world that might make it a more entertaining, fun place, kind of thing.
Nice. And what can you tell us about Abuse and Corruption Unlimited, where it was a company you made that made satirical board games? It looks so fascinating.
Yeah, it was actually, it was a joke, yes, it was. That was the name of the company. And we had it was very satirical. It was a period of time when there was so much satire in our country. And it's like the first game was Mercy the Hospital game, when there's no mercy in this hospital, and there was a sign, hanging out of the hospital today, special clean sheets,
Right.
It was fun, and again, a lot of the stuff I did was based on the satire of Batman. And even my book was very satirical in the style that it was presented, the book, Boy Wonder, My Life in Tights, where you read it and yet you're not saying, well, is he really pulling my leg? You can't really tell.
Right, right.
It was done in that wonderful, campy style.
Well, Adam West said about the book, I pretty much ignored it, but I was very grateful that Burt made me a combination of Errol Flynn, King Kong, and Daffy Duck.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was, anything I do, I don't do halfway. So it was kind of a coming of age book, a story, of somebody growing up in the shadows of the industry, having an opportunity to be in the industry of the film industry, television industry, and then being exposed to every strange thing in the world could happen to you as just a kid growing up, and some of the things that you do and you learn and you grow up, and it was it was great. I mean, the one thing that I've always done though is always been very health conscious. Unlike other actors, I never smoked, never drank, never took drugs. It was it was very clean life, and I must tell you, it's been so helpful because I look at my health now and I'm so much healthier. And then some of my counterparts in the industry that drank and smoked or took drugs, they just aged terribly,
right?
And you feel so bad for them. But we got to take care of ourselves. Life is a very precious commodity, very frail, very precious. And although I do tell people the first 100 years are the hardest, after that it's pretty smooth sailing.
Yeah, exactly. So you've had some musical recordings too. You had, what was it? I've Got Love for My Baby was like 6th on the charts in '71, and you worked with Mort Lindsay and Frank Zappa. Can you tell us about some of that?
Well, Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, that was his rock group. That these guys were really far out looking. Frank Zappa, he absolutely amazingly brilliant man, but he just didn't look like you'd think, right? And his group, the Mothers of Invention, they would come out and they'd play, and then they'd just tear up their instruments, tear up couches, they'd tear up everything, just destroy things. And it's like, here I am, an all-American apple pie, and MGM Records had come to me and convinced me to do this album with them, and the single, one song, Boy Wonder I Love You, became number 6 on WLS in Chicago, but it was taken off because in the song, it was just like I'm speaking, wasn't singing so much, had great music and stuff, but I'm speaking, where it was a fan letter, and a girl said, can you come over to my house, and I'd like you to stay the whole summer, I'll make you breakfast in bed. I mean, just so innocent, right?
Yeah.
But at the time, the censors were so tough, you couldn't even say that. And so it was number 6 in Chicago, and ended up getting pulled off because of censors. Now look what you have, where everything is just the opposite, where it's so unrestricted and so uncensored. But at the time, things were very, very conservative.
Right. That's amazing. I mean, you've done so many amazing things, and especially like in your filmography, the one that I always remembered as a kid being excited for it to come on TV, because you were in it amongst a lot of other cast members, was High School USA, which was in 1984. I mean, you had Crystal Bernard, Henry Gibson, most of the cast of Leave It to Beaver. What do you remember about that?
Well, you remember certain things, you don't remember everything, because there's too many things to remember.
Right.
But I always had fun whatever I was doing, I always had fun.
Hello, this is Rod Barnett. I'm the host of The Bloody Pit, the podcast that examines films from across the decades. On The Bloody Pit, we have several ongoing series of shows within the show focused on specific things in genre cinema that I and my co-hosts find fascinating. There's a long-running series focused on Italian maestro Antonio Margheriti's films from the 1960s all the way up through 1990. There's an on-again, off-again series focused on 1970s science fiction films. There's an in-depth look at the Western movies that William Castle made before he struck out on his own and became the horror auteur that we know and love. A look at the classic Coffin Joe films from Brazil. And our long-term project to look at every Universal horror film made in the 1940s. That's a long project, people. It's going to take us a long time. Sprinkled in amongst those are various other episodes focused on other stranger areas of cinema, like Lucio Fulci, Dario Argento, and even some obscure British crime films from time to time. So join me and my rotating crew of co-hosts as we examine the stranger side of cinema through an exploitation lens. Except when we don't? Yeah, you never really know exactly what to expect on The Bloody Pit. So join me for The Bloody Pit.
We come from the retro future. We want you to be nostalgic for what's to come. A new channel and distribution network for smart people with bad taste, featuring content from Church of the Subgenius, Creature Features, Cinema, Insomnia, Sleazy P. Martini and Guar, Troma, Corey Maccabee, horror, sci-fi, Saturday morning cartoons, midnight movies, and assorted trash we love. Add our channel OSI 74 to your Roku player or visit OSI74.com. All systems go.
So, Burt, why don't you tell us about Gentle Giants and how that all came about? Because it was originally Great Dane's adoption and rescue, right?
Yes, 26 years ago, when my wife and I moved here, where we're living inland, that's one of our dogs right there now. Wants to be part of it. And then I started talking about dogs; they want to be part of it. Yes, my wife and I moved inland from the beach about 26 years ago with our 3-year-old daughter, because we thought, rather than be living at the beach in a house that was like 4 stories with all these balconies way up in the air, that it'd be better for a child to grow up with more of a rural atmosphere. So we live about an hour east of Los Angeles and a wonderful animal-friendly community. So we moved here and we decided we were going to get a dog for our daughter. And I like Great Danes, and my wife grew up with Irish Wolfhounds. And it turned out that we heard about a Great Dane that needed to be rescued, and we rescued the dog, and just the sweetest dog, in the world. They're the bigger they are, the more gentle they are, and which is probably because they're not intimidated by the size of a human being when they can actually be bigger than a human being.
Right.
And that's why they call them Gentle Giants. And then we heard about a second one needing rescue, and we took that, and then we did hear of others that needed rescue, but they weren't in an animal shelter. They were in someone's home, and they said, well, we're going to be moving and stuff like that. And we said, well, we've got 2, and I'm sure you'll find somebody to, rescue your dog. Well, it turned out that like 2 months later, we heard that all these Great Danes were going to shelters and being put to death. These incredibly big, loving, sweet dogs. And we checked into it, we found out that all breeds have rescues. There's a Chihuahua rescue, there's a German Shepherd rescue, but the Great Dane rescue, the lady that in Southern California that had been doing it, she herself had died. So now all these Great Danes, if you couldn't keep it and went to a shelter, it's killed the day it goes in the shelter, or at least for the next 2 or 3 days, it's gone.
Wow.
Because there's just no room.
Yeah.
So I said to my wife, Tracy, in the first week in August of 1994, I said, Tracy, we can't let these dogs die. How about just for a couple of weeks, just till we find somebody else to take this over, we rescue these sweet dogs? Well, that was in August of 1994. By the end of August, the same month, we had 102 full-size Great Danes in our house and 62 puppies under 7 weeks of age.
Oh my!
Seven litters of puppies.
Wow.
Okay, totaling 62 puppies. Oh my gosh! So my wife Tracy ended up sleeping on the kitchen floor, because you got to make sure the puppies are nursing, and then when the mother gets up, because they're big Great Danes, if they stepped on a puppy, they could kill it. You got to make sure the puppies aren't in the way, and got to put her outside to be able to go to the bathroom while you take the litter and incubate them in a warm area, and then bring the next litter in and their mother in. 7 of them. By the time she got finished with the 7th one, it was time to start the first one again.
Oh my God.
Oh, it was unbelievable. And, and by the way, after 2 weeks, nobody came by. In fact, it's been more than 26 years and nobody has come to rescue us. I didn't realize what I was getting into. But long story short, we've now rescued more than 15,500 dogs.
Wow.
People would come to give up their Great Dane, and then they'd have a different breed, like maybe a small dog, and they'd say, well, I guess you're going to take my Great Dane, so my Great Dane won't die, but I guess I'll have to turn in my Cocker Spaniel or my Shepherd or my Retriever, and they'll put it to sleep. And And Tracy and I would look at each other, no, just leave that dog here too. We'll take that one. And, so after probably 6 months of doing this rescue, the first 6 months, now it's been 26 years, I think my wife and I had redefined the term Great Dane to mean if it has 4 legs and a tail, it must be a Great Dane. Everything was coming here. And, when you're living in our home with us, these are not in some yard or some building. They're in our home as members of our family. Ever since then, we've never had less than 50 in our house at any given time, 24/7. So when you're caring for so many dogs, you learn a lot. You really learn a lot.
Right.
And particularly with giant breeds, that their lifespans are traditionally very short. Mastiffs and Irish Wolfhounds normally only live 6 to 8 years. Great Danes normally live 7 to 9 years. It's a very short lifespan. And when we would lose a dog, we were devastated.
Right.
Because you can't adopt every single one of them. There's some you don't get adopted. So what we said is, look, there must be something we can do to help these animals live longer. They're so gentle and so loving. So we created a feeding and care program where on average, every single dog, just about every single dog living with us was living an extra 3 years. So the Great Danes that were living from 7 to 9 years ended up living 10 to 12 years.
Right.
And this was amazing. And we have a special way we feed them. We have a website, gentlegiantsdogfood.com. And we're using the dog food website, and there's a special feeding and care program is on the menu as one of the menu items. And it shows and tells what took us 25 years of our life to learn. The average person can read and learn in less than 25 minutes, and add years, 4 or 5, maybe as many as 7 or 8 years to their dog's life, just by the way you feed and care for them.
That's amazing.
And so then we said, okay, is there anything else we can do? We thought about it. I said, well, what if we made the finest food in the world? Now, this is for our dogs. You have to understand, when you're living with more than 50 dogs in your house, I'm not thinking about selling dog food or other people's dogs. I'm trying to survive caring for 50 dogs in my house, and every one has got to go out in and out all day, and this one can't be with that one, and this has to do that, and that one came in bandaged. You have to change the bandage. I mean, it is time consuming. So we went out and we had this food made, the finest food we could make, and we could afford it. We said, maybe we can pull out another year or two. But what we found out was so upsetting to us. It changed our lives forever. Here's what we found out when we went to make the food. The dog food companies know something the average person doesn't know, which is the more fat content you put in dog food, the hungrier it makes dogs. Okay? The hungrier it makes dogs mean they eat more food and you have to buy more dog food.
Right.
And I don't begrudge anybody making a living. I mean, our country lives on a capitalist system, but at the same time, when you go to the point of you adding extra fat and extra protein and all these extras there, they're not even extras, they're excessive to make animals believe they're always hungry so you can sell more dog food. Oh, I find that very upsetting. So long and short of it, I tell people this. If you have a dog and you're feeding them a food other than our Gentle Giants dog food, go feel those kibbles in your fingers. Rub them in your fingers, put them down, rub your fingers together. You're going to feel that slightly greasy feeling. And everybody feels it because it's there. I've never seen a food that it wasn't on. And I said, you realize that's animal fat? And I said, well, I didn't know what it is. I said, think of it this way. Would you take a can of bacon fat or grease, pour it down your garbage disposal at home? Would you ever do that? Well, of course not. It would ruin. I mean, it would, as I'm sure you guys know, unlike water that evaporates, animal fat coagulates. And when it hardens, it's like cement.
Right.
So you took a can of bacon fat, poured it down your garbage disposal. You wait 4 or 5 hours, and it turns to cement, you're going to be buying a new garbage disposal. So what is my point? The point is, when you realize that animal fat will ruin a metal garbage disposal, what do you think is happening to the arteries and intestines of dogs when every single day every single meal, every single bite, every single kibble is encapsulated in animal fat. It's prematurely killing dogs.
Right.
We have dogs living to 27 years. People say, well, is this some kind of magic? I said, no, we're just not prematurely killing them. We're giving them pure, natural food without preservatives, without chemicals, without fat covering it up to try to sell more food. And by the way, we consider this our charity. We take no salary at all. No salary at all. This is all about bringing out the finest food in the world in the most affordable way so that everybody who loves their dog can have a chance to live as long as our dogs are living. And they're living up to 27 and a half years. And I mean, with a quality of life that is superb. I mean, we have no illness here. I tell people the only time our dogs go to a veterinarian is every 3 years for a $10 rabies update. And this is our charity. Nice. Now we have our new cat food. Last year, we lost 2 of our cats. One was 31 years old. One was 32 years old.
Wow.
Unheard of. How did they live that long? They were eating our dog food, believe it or not. Now, we had regular cat food there because cats do need a little more protein than dogs. But we also had our dog food there. 75% of what they ate was our dog food. Only 25% was the cat food. So now we've got our new cat food, and our cats are doing amazing. And our dogs are doing them, and people are writing to us. I mean, I had a man and we've had this food out now since 2005, so it's been 16 years. But I had somebody write to us last August that said, you know, you don't know me, Mr. Ward. My dog has been eating your food now for so many years, and he just died, my German Shepherd, but he was 23 years old. And you think about it, who has ever had a German Shepherd live to 23 years of age?
Right.
I've never heard that.
So we've got people that are getting the same results. So this is our charity. We're now sold in 2,400 Walmarts across the country, 1,100 Targets online with every company from Walmart.com, Target.com, Chewy.com, Petco.com, PetSmart.com, TractorSupply.com. You can really easily get our food. But the key thing is our food is designed to help dogs live a lot longer, okay, 10 years or more longer with a better quality of life. And this is just something we're very proud of. So I wanted to mention that so that your listeners, if any of them out there have got a dog or a cat, and you want to have that animal an extra 5 or 10 years longer, check out our food, Gentle Giants. It's our website, gentlegiantsdogfood.com. And it's our charity, and we just love animals.
That's amazing. And I had a question for some of the early dogs that you rescued. You had deaf Dalmatians and Great Danes. Is there something about that type of dog that makes them prone to hearing loss?
Any dog could have hearing loss. Breeding is important, and sometimes, you have these puppy mills that do indiscriminate breeding. I will say this, with larger breeds, you have to be a little bit more careful and to make sure the bloodlines in the past are compatible and stuff like that. They do actually do blood tests and stuff before they breed. And I will tell you this, we've had, a number of wonderful dogs that were deaf, in some cases deaf or blind, which is a challenge. We have one now that's deaf and blind, which is really a challenge.
Yeah.
We love her, and she loves us, and she knows our place, and she gets along with the other dogs. It's just a wonderful thing that, and these are not insurmountable handicaps. You can have a wonderful life with saving a life of a dog that, is not perfect, and yet they can live a perfectly happy life,
Right. And you and Tracy have both said that Great Danes are perfect for apartments and condos. Why is that?
Believe it or not, they're the #1 apartment dog in New York City as a Great Dane. And the reason why is that they are not hyper. They're just like a human being. I'll tell you, one of the things that people are shocked when they'll meet a Great Dane is that, if you meet dogs, a lot of dogs are like,
Yeah.
and they're on to you, and they're on to the next, and everybody's having fun, and they want to go run and play. The Great Dane will come over and just hang with you. They'll just stand there, and it's like, my God, this dog is just staying here. He just letting me pet him. He's not doing anything, and or he'll lay down at my feet, and you're expecting them to get up and just go, run around or act like what you think a quote typical dog is, and they're more like a human. They're very, very human-like. And I'll tell you something. Like when we would go to the grocery store and have to leave them for a half an hour or 45 minutes, that dog can look at you and make you feel so guilty. How you dare to leave me for 45 minutes? You go, oh, okay. Oh my God. And they're so loving. Oh, and listen, I have 2 children. I love my children very much, and I've had 15,500 dogs, primarily giant breeds, but some small ones too. And we love all of them. But I will have to say this about the dogs. In 26 years of 15,500 dogs, not one of those dogs ever asked me to buy them a car.
That's amazing, Burt. You've done tremendous work in this area, and you should definitely be commended for it, because it's just an unbelievable service that you're providing for dogs.
Thank you. I will like to say this. My wife Tracy, who actually wants to speak to you when we finish our interview.
Sure.
She is like amazing. She is, you talk about dynamic duo. And here's what's so funny. My life, I've always been the person with the most energy, people. I'm like, oh, let's do this. I finally met my match with my wife, Tracy. I tell people, it's a good thing you spoke to me before you spoke to Tracy, because if you speak to her before you speak to me, you're going to think I'm a mute, that I can't even talk. She can talk me around the block. She has so much energy. I've never seen anybody in my whole life that has so much energy, and so loving, and such a great person who loves life and loves animals. And, our new motto is, we have on all of our bags, cat food, dog food, love for our precious pets and our precious planet. And so we're on a thing that is where we really are trying to make a better world for all of us to live in. And, pets are an important part of it. They bring a lot of comfort to people. And especially, I'm sure, during this whole COVID thing, you're aware that the one good thing that came out of that horrible thing is that so many pets in shelters have been taken out because people are staying at home, and they're using the pets to keep them company. And these animals that otherwise would be put to death are now finding loving homes. So that's good,
Yeah.
That's really terrific.
That's great. So, Burt, do you have any other projects coming up? Any animation gigs or books or anything you want to promote?
Well, Tracy, my wife, and I are working on a number of projects. We're actually building our own recording studio and a sound stage, and we're going to be involved in some filmmaking. And I also have a company called Boy Wonder Visual Effects that has done the graphics for 35 feature films. Nice. Graphics and visual effects. So we've got experience with computers and stuff, and we're just living day by day and having fun, and of course now being very, very careful. We have fun every day, and I think that everyone in life should try to make the most of every minute while you're here. There's a famous phrase: "Live each day as though it were your last, and someday you'll be right." And don't take life seriously. You don't get out of life anyhow. So the best things in life for free, and here I am good for nothing. But I have all these sayings, but we live a very happy, wonderful, fulfilled life, and we're trying to do great things. And we want to encourage people to do great things. We formed a new company called Superheroes to the Rescue, where we are giving out annual awards to people who are doing superhero things for their community and stuff like that. And we just want to try to bring out the best in mankind, because, we live in troubled times, and we want everybody to do their best to try to uplift all of us and make a better world for all of us.
That's amazing. So, Burt, can you once again tell our listeners how they can find Gentle Giants?
Yes, Gentle Giants dog food and dog and puppy food, and Gentle Giants cat and kitten food. They can go to our website, GentleGiantsDogFood.com, GentleGiantsCatFood.com. We also have a wonderful store at GentleGiantsPetProducts.com, and they can go into their favorite Target or Walmart and usually find our food. We're in most of those stores, and online with all the online companies, or do a search, Gentle Giants dog food or Gentle Giants cat food. And the one thing that you're going to get for sure, you're going to get the finest food in the world without us taking any salary to try to make it as affordable as possible so that everybody who loves their pet can have a chance for that dog or cat to live many years longer and healthier.
That's amazing. That's so good. Well,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Bert. It was an honor and a pleasure, and we hope you'll come back again sometime. I've got 1,000 more questions for you. So,
yeah.
In this case, I believe you. I definitely believe you. And as I always like to say on Batman, to the Batmobile, citizens.
Excellent. So, Justin, that was amazing, huh? What did you think of Burt Ward?
Man, a lot of really spectacular stories and experiences that he's had, and it's so positive, it's infectious.
Yeah. He's still got that amazing energy to this day. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So, Justin, where can the folks find you online?
You can find me several places, one of which is the Epic Tales from the Sewers podcast, which is all about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You can find me on the Fantastic podcast, and you can also find me as one of the producers of the Amalgamania Podcast and Entertainment Awards. And that is at Amalga, AMALGA-mania, MANIA.com.
Excellent. Thanks once again for joining me. And this was just a fabulous episode, and I can't wait for the next time you're on the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's all the time we have today for Then Is Now podcast. We hope you enjoyed our interview with the legendary icon Burt Ward. Go watch some Batman, and please, if you are a dog or cat owner, support Gentle Giants by buying their products. Remember, you can send your feedback to thenisnow42@gmail.com. You can also join in the conversation at our Facebook Then Is Now podcast group. Then Is Now podcast is a proud member of the Dorkening Podcast Network, so please be sure to check out all the great shows there at thedorkening.com. You can also visit our website at havenpodcasts.com, where you'll find our sister show, The East Meets the West, in which we discuss Shaw Brothers films and spaghetti western movies. And Then Is Now is on YouTube, so visit youtube.com/user/UncleDeath1 to get the latest videos as well as other fun videos. Please subscribe to our YouTube page and also share the video versions of our podcast with your friends and get them to subscribe as well. Don't forget to go wherever you download your podcasts from and leave us a great review so more listeners can find us. You can find us on all the podcasting apps, especially the big three, iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher. Class dismissed.
For more shows like the one you just heard, check out the Dorkening Podcast Network at thedorkening.com.
Is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. Sounds, music, and clips played during this podcast are the property of their copyright holders. All original content is copyright Jupiter Media.
Citizens.